Greetings from Northwest Pennsylvania, and welcome to the Skully and Gypsy channel, where we discuss things related to motorcycles, firearms, and adult beverages, or put simply, bikes, bullets, and booze. And today, we're going to be discussing some of my choices in personal defense ammunition. And we'll cover the three main calibers that both Gypsy and I carry. Excuse me. Uh, from 9mm to 380 to 38 and 357. The choices that I have made are based on what ballistic testing I could do myself, which is mostly accuracy. I don't own a chronograph and I'm not into ballistic gel testing, but there's enough of that on other channels on YouTube and other sources on the internet that you can make your own informed decision on what ammunition would be best for your particular situation. Now, with Gypsy and I are not really in a city, it's a very rural area, but it can be a relatively populated areas, and her particular line of work, and we're always concerned about over penetration. There's a lot of ammunition out there that, through FBI testing, penetrates 18 to 20 inches and ballistic gel, and that's good. But the FBI is more concerned with law enforcement, and as a personal defense ammo for the average person, that kind of penetration is not always necessary or even wanted. In my case, I don't want that kind of deep penetration. I prefer something that's a little less than that, 10 to 12 inches in ballistic gel. And these three choices here in 9mm are the three best that I've come up with. The critical defense, which is, there it is, over there, has a pretty good record for penetrating deep enough and expanding, which does limit penetration. To the, it was a good choice for me at first, until I started discovering different manufacturers. The other choice I have is Federal Punch, which in most cases I would consider an over penetrating round, but not as bad as, or as good, depending on how you look at it, as other rounds that are out there. It's a round that I would carry if I'm going into a more open area, maybe possibly having to penetrate different barriers. And the Federal Punch has a pretty good record for being able to defeat certain barriers that may be in your way, or you may have to penetrate. Not something I would choose for home defense. It would tend to go through too much, more than I would ever really want to deal with. And my third choice, which is the centerfire, is if you look at it, it's a funny looking bullet. It is a hollow point, but it's not an expanding round. This is a frangible round, or a fragmenting round. It's a copper polymer matrix, so there's no lead. It's completely lead free. this round breaks into 4 pieces on impact. Three pieces come off the tip, just around where that hollow point is. And the 4th piece is the base. And that's what carries on into a depth that would be sufficient to incapacitate a possible attacker. I find it to be quite accurate in my particular firearms. So is the Federal Punch, and so is the Critical Defense Light. So look at this. Federal Punch has a good sizable hollow point. It does expand quite well. But like I said, it's a good barrier breaching round if I feel it necessary. Primarily, I carry the center fire. The other reason for the center fire over the other two is being that it's a frangible round. If it hits a hard surface, it turns to dust, basically. There is little to no chance of ricochet, and the outside chance that you missed your shot, or if the bullet did actually pass through the intended target, if it hit a hard surface, it would just disintegrate. It literally turns to powder. There is no chance of ricochet with those. And that's something I always consider in a self-defense situation. You don't want bystanders or, an innocent party being hit. You are responsible for every round out of your gun, and to be a responsible concealed carrier, I think it's a very important criteria in a choice of ammunition. Moving on to 380. And we have the Federal Punch. Then 380, pardon my big sausage fingers, the centerfire in 380, and the PPU in 380. And I like PPU, and I like the Fiocchi. In their particular ballistic testing, they did quite well. Actually, I believe the Fiocchi was a little better, but I don't have any examples of that at the moment. My last box of that I gifted to a friend of mine back in New York, who was having trouble getting 380 ammo for his little LCP. So I gave him the best that I could come up with that would work in his particular gun. And I know it works in the 3.8 in the LCPs, because of my Gypsy's 2 LCPs. They all worked very well in her particular guns. The Federal Punch is a light for caliber. Usually 380 is about 95 grain. Yeah, 95 grain. And these are 85s. They also work very well out the LCP or LCP2 if you have one of those. They work very well out of my Glock 42 and do have a good record of penetration without over penetrating. They get decent expansion. They do have some barrier breaching qualities to them, but as a general rule, I don't carry the Federal Punch very often. I usually don't feel the need for it. The PPU I tend to practice with. It's a relatively inexpensive ammo. It usually comes in a 50 round box like you see there. I know it'll run about the same price as a box of 20 Federal Punch. and they have about the same point of impact, so it kind of works out for me to practice with some of that, as well as my hand loads, which duplicate the federal punch. And primarily what both Gypsy and I actually carry at the moment is the center fire. Again, I know it keeps coming up, but when I find something I like that is accurate in my particular firearms and is rated as a good self-defense round through ballistic testing, I tend to stick with it. Now we'll turn our attention to 357 Magnum. I actually don't carry the 357 Magnum for personal defense when I'm about town. I believe it's a bit overkill, if you pardon the pun, but as a cartridge that I would carry in the woods, yeah, that's would be my choice to carry either in my Colt or in my little snubby Taurus 605. I like the Fiocchi. It's a little light in velocity, but it's 158 grain jacketed hollow point. It has a decent expansion on, we'll say, a heavier target. Okay, more of the four-legged variety, which is why I choose something like this. It's really not for home defense. It's way too powerful for that, though it is a lighter velocity or lower velocity rounds, about 1,200 feet per second. As 357s go, that's on the lower end, and it works extremely well out of my snub nose. And that would be the choice for, hiking in the woods, bear protection, large cats if you live in an area with mountain lions or cougars, whatever, larger larger cats. I would never suggest this for a Sasquatch load. Something like that actually exists. But it is something I chose. I usually, what I used to carry were my hand loads, which were 168 grain semi wad cutter Keith bullet, really good penetrators, but brutal out of a snub nose. So I chose these. The price on them was absolutely reasonable. You could spend a lot more for some of the more boutique rounds out there, and I don't think you gain all that much more performance out of them. But that's my personal opinion. And now, we're going to get down to the 38 special. And what you see in front of you are the old school and the new school over here to the right. What you see on the left is what was called the old FBI load. It's a 158 grain not even jacket, it's a soft lead hollow point. That was what the FBI used to carry back in the day, and it's what I used to carry back in the day when I lived in New York. I either carried a 45 auto or a 4-inch Colt 38 special. there wasn't a whole lot of choices back then. We're going back to the 80s, and you had the FBI load, you had your federal 110 grain jacketed soft point, and you had your Winchester silver tips. Well, I don't have any more Winchester silver tips. I actually shot those off years ago. Uh, Actually, when I stopped carrying the 38 and pretty much stayed strictly with the 45 auto. I don't carry the 45 auto anymore. I actually, when I left New York, I gifted my last 45 auto to a very good friend who really loved the idea of a 45 auto. I was just tired of carrying a big old hog leg on me. And when I moved to PA, I switched off to snub nose 38s, 380s, 9 millimeter. I still have some of my bigger caliber guns, but they were for hunting. They weren't really for personal defense. My Smith and Wesson Model 25 is just too much of a gun to carry for personal defense. It's hard to conceal it, and I'm a big advocate of concealing it. Even though Pennsylvania is an open carry state, I don't like the idea of open carry. I prefer the anonymity of nobody seeing that you're carrying. But what I carry now in my 38s, either my Smith and Wesson or my Taurus 605, is the Federal Punch. Here we go again. It's about the best option I could come up with. I have yet to find a centerfire loaded 38 special. If I did find it, I would definitely give it a try, see how it worked in my particular firearms, and probably switch off to that for the same reasons I use it in my 380 or my 9 millimeter, and that is decent penetration without over penetrating, doesn't rely on expansion, but relies on fragmentation, and the low chance of ricochet, actually zero chance of ricochet, because of the bullet being a copper polymer matrix. It just turns into copper dust when it hits a hard surface. It's just something I feel is important for me. Maybe I'm paranoid. I just don't like the idea of rounds ricocheting and going in directions they're not intended to. Years ago, I was hit with a ricochet from a Albany cop who was not even shooting in my general direction. I was sitting at an intersection waiting for the light to change on my motorcycle, and a chunk of jacketing material and a little bit of lead, whatever, caught me in the leg. Caught me just above the knee. Didn't cause anything but more than, a surface wound. It's pretty much a little larger than a scratch, but still, it's one of those things that, you have to think about. You have to be concerned about. It's funny when I think about it that I have held on to this box of ammo for so long that the lead is oxidized on them. I don't know whether I can't bring myself to shoot them, or I don't know what it is. It's just they've been sitting in storage forever. Same thing with these 158 grain soft lead hollow points or semi wad cutter hollow points. keep them around for, I don't know why. I shoot reloaded ammo out of my 38s, and I kind of choose the powder coated bullets because they don't foul the gun up so much. So maybe that's the reason why I don't shoot them, because they foul the living daylights. You know, they let up a barrel quicker than anything. But this is my choice now. The Federal Punch 120 some odd grain. I can't remember, 120. Yeah, I think it's 120 grain. Jacketed hollow points. They work very well. They're very accurate out of my firearms, and they do have a pretty good ballistic testing for being able to penetrate deep enough, but not too deep, to expand even through, clothing barriers. They work quite well. And if you see, I got it on a Zeta 6 speed strip. That's my particular way to carry my reloads. You could go with like the S&K speed loader. I just find it's bulky in my pocket. I prefer this because it lays completely flat in my pocket, and I can carry 5 to 10 rounds of reloads if I feel necessary to carry that many. Most times I just carry one strip and the 5 rounds that are in my gun, and I feel well protected that way. So I want to thank you for watching. If you have a comment, by all means, comment on it. If you like my video, hit the like button. If you like the kind of topics we discuss, just hit the subscribe button. And again, thank you for watching.